The Sarasota County Bar Association is a proud partner in bringing you law in Sarasota. With voluntary membership of over 1,000 lawyers and judges, the Sarasota County Bar Association serves its members and your community by advancing legal professionalism, promoting practice development, and fostering fellowship. Visit www.sarasotabar.com for more information and to use the online directory to find an attorney.
This program is brought to you by a grant from the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the Sarasota County Bar Association. The Education Channel produces the program and broadcasts from its state-of-the-art campus on Beneva Road. They make this program possible.
Welcome back to part 2 of our discussion with Ron Turner, the Supervisor of Elections. This is Law in Sarasota. I'm Erika Quartermaine, and again, we have Mr. Turner here. So I'd like to next turn to the elections themselves.
Okay.
So first, let's talk a little bit about the canvassing board. Tell us about the canvassing board.
So each of the counties in Florida, under Florida law, have a county canvassing board for countywide election. So this year we've had, or having, 3 elections. We had one in March, which was a presidential preference primary. It was for one of the major parties. And then we have an August primary, and then we have a November election. And so the canvassing board will be seated for those 3 elections. Florida law dictates the composition of the canvassing board. So a county judge is the chair this year. Judge Quartermaine, you are the chair of the county canvassing board, and you have served in that capacity in the past. That's how I've gotten to know you well and work with you as a colleague on the elections side in canvassing. Then the Supervisor of Elections is a member of the canvassing board, and then the third member is either the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, commissioner, or if one of those individuals cannot serve, then a substitute plus an alternate is appointed for these seats. The canvassing board is an interesting body. I did a little research, and some of the teaching that I've done with kind of newer supervisors or at some of the canvassing board workshops that have been held at the state level. And so the canvassing process started in Florida in the 1800s. So these functions have existed in some way, shape, or form, but the current body wasn't in existence then. I think it's kind of a brilliant setup because oftentimes I'll be asked, are these people representing, a certain political party, as I mentioned kind of with my staff? I'm like, no. Think about how this is composed. You have the judicial branch of county government, right, with a county judge. You have someone representing the Board of County Commissioners, which is a legislative body, local policy makers, lawmakers. And then you have the Supervisor of Elections, who's an executive administrator, so representing the executive. So it's the legislative, executive, judicial branches of county government that are balanced in the canvassing board.
Oh, that is incredible.
So it makes sense. Whoever came up with this kind of concept, it seems kind of brilliant. But as you know, that canvassing board has a variety of functions throughout election. Most people don't know it even exists. For those who do, which are typically political parties or candidates, campaigns, sometimes send people, as you know, to our meetings to observe our activities. But we do a variety of things. We test voting equipment before the election. We do a public test. We canvass all the vote by mail ballots, which are significant. You're talking about tens of thousands of ballots. Sometimes, depending on the election, it can exceed 100,000.
And when you say canvass, you mean, tell us each of the steps, because there's a lot of discussion about vote by mail ballots. So I think you mean from the top, making sure the ballot comes from the voter, and walk us through that process. So
when I'm talking about vote by mail and canvassing that, so the canvassing board itself for that process has, in a public meeting, because as you know, each of the 3 members has an actual vote and holds a public meeting. And it's a quasi-judicial body and kind of function. And the 3 of us will determine with the supervisor staff, with my staff, when we can begin opening and processing those vote by mail ballots through tabulators. And we do that weeks before an election. The canvassing board publicly tests through what we call logic and accuracy tests, the accuracy of the voting equipment. Then after that's complete and the canvassing board has satisfied that function, then the canvassing board will determine that the staff can then begin opening the vote by mail ballots, and we can start running those through scanners that we have. We don't have any election results then, but that's the pre-processing of these, so that's termed canvassing. That involved a lot of different things. One thing, the signature has been verified on every one of those vote by mail ballot envelopes against what is in the voter's record. Vote by mail ballots in themselves have to, a voter requests them provide certain identifying information, their Florida driver license, Florida identification card number, last four of the Social Security, date of birth, address, those things. So we're matching those items to what's already been verified in the voter record. And then those ballots are not forwardable. So if I mail you a ballot and you're not at that address because you forgot to tell us and you went to Ohio to visit your grandkids, well, then chances are that ballot could come back to us, because in big bold letters on the envelope it says do not forward. You mentioned in our earlier segment about the secrecy of the ballot. And so we don't want to be able to tie someone's ballot back to their envelope with their name on it, because we've already verified the authenticity of the voter and the ballot, because we don't all get the same ballot style in Sarasota County, right? It's by precinct. It could be by party in a primary. But so that is a long kind of process, as you know, and we're doing that all in advance. So one of the successes of Florida and Sarasota County has been we do that process in advance. Every state doesn't do that. Some states don't touch those ballots until Election Day. Frankly, having done that, as you know, and seeing that, it's labor intensive. It takes weeks. Sometimes we work more than 5 days a week, 6, 7 days a week, more than 8 hours a day, looking at those things. The other thing the canvassing board does with that, as you know, is once we run those ballots through high-speed scanners to begin the tabulation process, even though we don't see the results, the machines are looking for if someone's overvoted.
Which means in any given race, they've bubbled in 2 candidates.
Right.
Right.
A blank ballot.
Or a blank ballot, yeah.
Or a miscellaneous mark.
Which could be like a little tear on the side,
right,
a stray pen mark,
right,
coffee stains. I think we've seen food or things to that effect.
People may use a check mark instead of filling in the oval. Obviously you didn't get that memo in school when you filled in the little oval test. But, and as you know, the canvassing board, say in a general election, specifically in a presidential general, will look at thousands of ballots like that, thousands, one by one. And we sit and we try to determine what the voter intent was, so we can honor their intent. And we do that in a public way. So those are just a few of the things. The other thing the canvassing board does after the election is an audit, which is very important. I don't know that everyone knows that we audit every election in Florida. And one of the new things we've added this year is an automated independent audit system. You can do, as you know, Judge, a kind of a random sample, a small hand count, but it's pretty small. It's typically a precinct and a race on the ballot. This provides us the opportunity, though, to look at 100% of the ballots in the county. We just used it for the presidential preference primary in March, and it showed that between the primary system or our secondary system, there was 100% match in the ballots, ballot counts, and even the ballot types, vote by mail, early election day.
So this is really significant, because historically, like you said, we would take one precinct, we would count those, compare that, and it was fine. But this now is truly 2 separate machines on 2, not connected to anything, 2 totally independent of each other.
Right.
So you are getting 2 counts from 2 separate machines.
Right, of every ballot in this county. And you can reconcile and compare to each other. And so the state certified the system to do this. And so thankfully Sarasota County provided the funding so we could to do this. And so we use it on a smaller scale for the Venice election last November, and then this was our first countywide, and the plan is for August and November again. So we're really excited about having this because we want to, again, we're in the trust business. You mentioned that earlier, and we want to do everything that we can. We want to leave no stone unturned, no tool in the toolkit that the law provides us or the state provides us legally. So Sarasota County tries to avail itself, we do, of every opportunity we have to try to follow the law, serve our voters, and then show them that, that their ballot's counted like it's supposed to be counted. And we want to guarantee them that, and we do.
And you raised another interesting point, which is the degree by which Tallahassee influences the local elections. They pick the machines that can be certified under Florida law, right? So there were only a certain number. They do their independent testing, and then they approve them for use. So then you had your primary ones, which were Dominion and
ES&S, and we use ES&S, which is Election Systems and Software, out of Omaha, Nebraska. And as you said, it is the Secretary of State under the Governor's administration that certifies these systems for counties. And so, as you mentioned, it's a very small number. It's just two vendors. And so the county commission so the county commission actually owns the system, and the supervisor of elections operates, maintains, is the custodian of it. So there's kind of a dual role there under the law with that, a checks and balance. But those are the only two the county can choose from, and we're required to use them under Florida law. But the Secretary of State verifies the systems for us. Any software updates that we get do not come from the vendor. The vendor sends those to the Secretary of State for the state of Florida, and their IT individual staff vet that, and they send it to us. So we don't even take anything directly. There's a checks and balance with this. And here we program our own ballots in Sarasota County. So I have an IT department, as you know, and they actually lay the ballot out according to Florida statutes, Florida Administrative Code, what that looks like, what the order of the ballot is, because even that is more complicated than people think, because there's not one ballot style, and everything is on there is following a certain methodology under Florida law and Florida Administrative Code. And so
so you're not making it up as you go along. It is all in the law.
And listen, I tell people, hey, if you want the law changed, you're talking to the wrong guy, primarily. You need to talk to your legislators, whatever. My job. I
understand the feeling.
You understand the feeling as a judge. So, and certainly I'm happy to share that information with our elected representatives, and I do. But my job, like yours as a judge, I took an oath. And my job is to uphold the law, regardless of my opinion about that, and to do it in, as you've mentioned, an unbiased kind of way and fairly across the board. So.
Yes. All right. So now let's. I think we were almost done talking about the canvassing board, but we stopped at the canvassing of the mail-in ballot. So if you could. That was the first part of counting the votes. Then there's early voting and voting day. So take us through that.
So early voting. In Florida, there are 3 ways to vote. You can vote by mail, which is just another name for an absentee ballot. That system, for no excuse, meaning you didn't have to be absent from your precinct or from the county or be in a hospital or something along those lines. The no excuse absentee ballots originated in 2002 in Florida. So it's been 22 years. In 2016, the state changed the name to vote by mail. That doesn't mean we mail a ballot to everyone. These are just absentee ballots. But because you don't have to be absent, which is the root word of absentee, they changed the name to vote by mail. I mention that because some states do different things where they mail ballots to every voter, and so sometimes there's confusion about that. But so we have in-person early voting, which is another convenience method for voting. We'll have 6 sites for the primary, 10 sites in the general election coming up. But individuals can come to one of those designated locations during an early voting period of time and vote in person. That method of voting is very similar to going to your polling place on election day. the beauty of it is it gives you some of the convenience like vote by mail does, right? Because you can pick and choose where you want to vote. On election day, you're assigned your polling location. But this, you can pick and choose where you're at. So for those vote by mail or those early voting ballots, we actually take the results from those machines and upload those right into our system, because on election night, as you know, the first results that are released to the public are all of the in-person early voting results and most of the vote by mail. Why would I say most and not all? Well, vote by mail ballots have to be back to the Supervisor of Elections by 7 p.m. in the elections office. Postmarks don't work for domestic vote by mail ballots, and you can't drop them off at a polling place. So we will have people, it's like anything else in life, that will be running through the door at 6:45 p.m. with their ballots in hand, and there's significantly more of them than, that return them, which is fine. But we still have to process those, and we have offices in Northport, Venice, so that takes time. But at 7 p.m., most of the results that are coming out are all the early voting that have been canvassed, and 99% of the vote by mail ballots at that point. And then you have election day, where the canvassing board will be there on election night waiting for those results to come in throughout the evening, through various precincts. For a general election, primary night is a little earlier than for a general election. General elections, the canvassing board, for at least the last couple, has met after the polls close, late in the afternoon until after midnight. Usually it's been 12 or 12:30 in the morning to finish up the canvassing board work just from that one canvassing board meeting on election night. So, and then my staff's still there beyond that until the wee hours of the morning, as you know.
Right, and then we're double checking signatures throughout this period of time.
Oh, yes.
And then reconciling the types of votes that have come in. And then at the conclusion, we perform the audits as the canvassing board, continue to reconcile the types of votes that have come in. And
you want to do people versus pieces of paper, right?
Right.
How many people requested a vote by mail ballot? Right. What type of vote by mail ballot did they get? If they're in precinct 101 or 103 or whatever. Same thing with early voting election day. How many people checked in? We use electronic poll books, but how many people checked in to vote? How many pieces of paper went through our tabulators? Because we want to know pieces of paper versus people versus votes.
Right.
And so we're reconciling all of that down to the precinct level, to the method of voting, vote by mail, early voting, election day. So as you know, it's pretty complex reconciliation at the granular level and then at the 30,000 feet level across the county here to try to get this right.
And the numbers are truly incredible, and I think they're going to be, meaning the voter turnout is truly incredible, which I think is a function of the outreach your office has done. And I think, this particular election, as we sit here, it's April in 2024. We have a very significant presidential election coming up. Two ballot initiatives, one related to abortion, one related to cannabis. So there's going to probably be a big turnout.
I think, the last two presidential elections, we've had more than 80% turnout. My guess is with this, we could potentially set a record turnout. I think it will be, my gut tells me it'll be higher than that 80%, and where in the 80% does that land? Is that 81, 82, 85? I think, there's the potential here based on the things that you've just described, and based on our historic numbers in Sarasota County for potentially record-setting turnout in this general election.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of it. It's going to be my third presidential election, and I am always in awe by the work that we accomplish as the canvassing board, but more importantly, your office. So let's talk about election integrity for a little bit, because that's been on everybody's minds. First of all, I want to talk about these precincts, because if I live in Southgate, say, and you live in Gulfgate, right, our ballots will not, as you have discussed earlier, will not look the same. I may have a different county commissioner because we have these independent districts now. I may have even a different representative. So you are dealing with how many versions of a ballot this time?
Well, it depends. Like in August for a primary, you're going to have party variances because we have closed primaries in Florida. So you're going to have a Democratic ballot, a Republican ballot, and a nonpartisan ballot in August because there's something for everyone to vote on. Say school board races are on the August ballot. Right?
Okay.
And they're a nonpartisan race. So everyone that's on everyone's ballot in the county. So if you're a voter without party affiliation, that could potentially maybe the only thing on your ballot in August, but it's still important, right? But to your point, so there are, we have 103 precincts, and you at least have 3, say, in August ballot styles. You could have more than that because inside precincts, we have splits, as you just mentioned. So you could be in a precinct, and the people in that precinct may not even have the same county commissioner, same state representative, whatever that it is. So the poll workers can have multiple ballot styles there in that. And so when you check in, you show your photo signature ID, they're going to look you up in an electronic poll book. It's going to show them what ballot style that they're supposed to get. And they're going to issue you your ballot style based on your voter record in the county. But that's complicated, and it's a lot.
And that's probably one of the reasons using the machines to count makes it much easier and more accurate because hand voting from different pieces of paper with different races on it can prove to be extremely challenging.
Well, in the general election in 2022, we had more than 60 items on the ballot. And so the ballots for the general election back then and for recent general elections have been, for the November general election, 8.5 by 17 inches wide, a standard width, but 17 inches long, right? And then those have been 2 ballot cards, an A card and a B card, so 2 separate sheets of paper. Some of them up to on the first card is going to be front and back, all the way 17 inches long. Then on the second, it's going to run over to that second one. It can go to the back of that second one. So some people had a lot of contests, because you're going to be federal, state, county, special district, local, municipal, and then wash, rinse, repeat with the issues, right? But so you're going to have state questions, county questions, potentially, municipal questions. And so if you live in the city of Venice, you had multiple questions last November. I think it was like 13 questions. Northport had their own questions. City of Sarasota had their questions. Sarasota County had questions. And so it depends on where you're at. So there were, of the ovals that were tabulated, I think I estimated there were 6.5 million ovals that would have to be tabulated.
Counted, and then all the papers would have to be separated multiple times by different races. It would be...
Well, the last time that we did a hand audit in the 2022, November 2022 for the general election, the canvassing board randomly drew 1 precinct and 1 race on the ballot. And then my teams hand counted all of the vote by mail early voting and election day. That took, I think, 6 hours or more to do that 1 race, 1 precinct. It wasn't even the entire ballot. So, and to get that, right in those counts to reconcile. So it is complicated. I know different people have different opinions, and that's fine, respect that. But currently Florida law says, it's in a statute, Florida statute 101.5604. I'm sure you have you don't wonder why I know this, because I've been asked this so often as the Supervisor of Elections, but it says Florida counties must use a precinct-based electromechanical tabulation system. So it doesn't even give us the option for any other counting other than using those machines. And so I go back to the law again. If voters want something changed, and then their legislators have to do that. And I'm certainly always willing to listen to different concerns and things, but it is a major project. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
All right. So at the last election, social media had some videos circulating that showed individuals marking ballots at the Supervisors of Elections offices. And the interpretation was that people were filling out ballots and trying to influence a race. So tell us what was going on there.
For us, as you know, for canvassing board, when we look at those vote by mail ballots, right, and I mentioned earlier that we can look at thousands of them in a general election that may have overvotes, as we said, where they filled in more than one oval. Well, maybe the voter didn't mean to fill in more than one oval. What they will end up, the machine will see it as an overvote, but they may write a note out to the site, I made a mistake and I meant to vote for this candidate. They may make it that clear, as you know, as you've seen. Sometimes it's not as clear, but what happens is we have to make under the Florida law, we have to make a duplicate of that ballot using the voter intent decisions of the canvassing board, based on the canvassing board decisions. And we have teams of staff. Again, they're nonpartisan, but they're representing, right? They have different people of different party makeup there. And they take whatever the canvassing board tells them, instructions, to recreate that ballot in a way that it should have been filled in correctly to begin with, so that ballot can then be tabulated, because there's no other way to get that count. So what they may be looking at is those duplication teams filling out ballots. And what we do is we keep a log sheet, and on the original ballot we have a stamp and it says original with a serial number, and on the duplicate ballot at the bottom we stamp, it says duplicate, and so we fold up and keep the original. We sign, whether it's 001, 001. We can always go back and match those up. So we're only counting the duplicates and we're keeping the originals, but there's a lot of duplication. The other reason you would do that is for military and overseas civilians, they can return their ballot through a secure fax line. They're the only voters that can do that. And of course, God bless our men and women,
like
overseas and the military. They not only get to vote first and have their ballots, but we have some other methods for them to return their ballots. And one of them is through a dedicated secure fax line that goes into a vault in my office. But those, we can't run a fax through a tabulator, so we have to duplicate those ballots. And so those people, after the canvassing board looks at these fax ballots, they will make those for the military. And as you've seen before, speaking of the men and women, their ballots are always filled out, well. They do a good job following instructions. So God bless them. But that's part of the process. So that's often what people are seeing. And that's something here, perception becomes reality. And so we get a lot of questions because people see something. And I remind my staff, whether it's temporary or regular people, even the people at our secure ballot intake stations, others, listen, think about how people are perceiving, whatever it is activity that you're doing within the law. Because that, is kind of how we're being measured. And also, social media. People do take pictures of us, take videos, send them to me, things, show me later.
Right.
What is this? What is this container? What is this?
Right.
And I explain, what that is to them.
All right. For the last question I wanted to, if we can get to another one. What is ballot harvesting and how do you prevent it?
Okay, so in Florida law, it prevents ballot harvesting. It's not legal. Generally, ballot harvesting, while there's no legal definition, it's basically considered, collecting vote-by-mail ballots other than, say, your own or whatever. Now, those may be legal, they may be not legal, but it's a collection process of vote-by-mail ballots. In Florida, Florida law requires that you can return your own ballot, those of an immediate family member, and it defines what those immediate family members are, and two others. So say you had a neighbor or went to church or whatever, and someone needed assistance, the law does account for two others outside your family and yourself. But other than that, individuals, it is against the law for them to touch these ballots or return these ballots to me. And when you if you return in person to me at a secure ballot intake station where my friendly elections officials are, you will notice there's a large retractable banner notice that spells out the statute and what that this is, what the limitations are for that.
And they are being monitored.
Mine are always monitored. They're not 24/7. They're inside and they're monitored by staff all the time. We monitor who's dropping in, the quantity kind of being dropped in there, keeping an eye on that. And then every ballot that's removed from those secure ballot intake stations is logged so that we know what voter dropped it off, what day, what location. So we create logs, which is a massive undertaking, one by one of those. But we're tracking all of those things. We keep a close eye on our ballots and voters, in Sarasota County to try to reconcile and maintain a chain of custody, because you want a chain of custody of those ballots from the time that we maybe received them from the vendor until the time the election is concluded.
All right. Well, I know that you have a lot more information that you could share, but we do have to wrap it up at this time. And I know I'm grateful for your service and for your knowledge. And I am certain our community is as well. One of the things that I love seeing is when people come in, they see what you do and they leave feeling that the job is being done well. And that's a great feeling. So I want to thank everyone who joined us and watched this. And we'll be back for another episode of Law in Sarasota.
For more than 40 years, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County has partnered with estate planning attorneys and their clients to unlock possibilities for everyone who calls our region home. Our motto, Be the One, reflects our deeply held belief that anyone can be a philanthropist and give back to our community regardless of means. Visit www.cfsarasota.org or call 941-955-3000 for more information.